Knowing your ICP, who your ideal customer profile, knowing who you're serving, knowing their sharp problem, and being able to create some learning mechanism is critical.
The most important thing a founder can do is build a product. Now, we know founders are stretched thing. They got to raise money if that's an issue, and they have to hire people. Well, by far the most important risk, even as an investor, is build risk. This is the thing that knocks off 90% of startups. Product management is the function, the responsibility to build something that people love. And even that is a very important word because, first of all, you have to find something that they value, something that they find irresistible, something that accelerates their lives, hopefully ethically. And then you have to make it in a form and a function that they find compelling and attractive.
Today we're closing off season 6. We're going to do it with a bang. We will discuss how to scale your B2B SaaS going from $0 to $100 million ARR. I won't have one guest today, but I'm actually joined by a power duo, Ozi and Ezinne Udizeway. They both worked at massive B2B SaaS companies, which include Typeform, WP Engine, Procore, Canatly, Twitter, and many more. They will have insights that only come from being at the top of a product organization. Currently, they help leaders and PMs on how to leverage AI capabilities to create compelling solutions to sharp problems and building a strategic advantage from there. They also wrote a book together, which is called Building Rocketships, Product Management for High Growth Companies. One personal fact about my guests, they have been married for 20 years. Welcome to the show, Oji and Ezinne.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
Hey,
so much, Jerome. We are
yeah,
glad to be here.
definitely happy to be here.
Nice. We're just going to dive right in. What does product management mean for you or mean for the both of you?
I'll start. I know you have opinions. At the heart of it, we think product management is a craft. We often get this question, is it art or science? A craft brings the best of both worlds and you're always improving. But it's a craft that really is about orchestrating uncertainty through others and oneself into compounding value. And what exactly do those words mean? It is that there are sharp problems out there. The job of product management is to take all that chaotic ingredient, all the chaotic ingredients of problems, of people, of technology, and create something that creates a clear path to value in a way that serves the user and the business. We think about it through three core things: identifying a sharp problem and solutioning for it. That's the first piece. The second piece is getting that product or solution into the hands of your customers. And the third is that transformation and discovery that has to occur that allows you to evolve the product through a learning mindset and creating true feedback loops. That's what we think of product management holistically.
The only thing I want to sprinkle on top of that is, I love the words you use, like sharp problems, which is a really important idea in the book, but also that we use for consulting and helping people come to better outcomes. Well, the thing that I want to add is people who build companies, look, they're trying to create generational wealth, they're trying to help humanity, they're trying to help businesses, whatever it is. Product management is the function, the responsibility to build something that people love. And even that is a very important word because, first of all, you have to find something that they value, something that they find irresistible, something that accelerates their lives, hopefully ethically. And then you have to make it in a form and a function that they find compelling and attractive. And if you can do that, usually involved in distilling a workflow or imagine a new workflow for something that people have always done, then the next step is how do we get it to 10 people, 10,000 people, a million people, a billion people? And what is our business model for making money from it? Because we've created something that people want. And product management is really the bridge of those two. Create value for our customers and then create value for business by making sure that the business model executes.
Nice. And I mean, our audience are B2B SaaS founders. So maybe
Mhm.
specifically towards them, is it so important for SaaS founders to do product management?
I love the fact that you said for founders to do product management Because there tends to be this idea of product managers are the only ones who do product management, and being able to separate that is actually a really interesting thing. I think that product management often gets misunderstood as the admin layer of prioritizing features, et cetera, et cetera. But when you look back, it really is about clarifying bets. Okay. It is being really specific about there are multiple paths one can go down, multiple options people can take. And that is the essence of what a founder has to do. I have opportunities in front of me, and I could choose this, that, or the other. I have a few developers, and we can build this, that, or the other. So having that mindset where you are sure that you are compounding the right things, solving durable pain, not just sharp, but something that's also durable, building systems that allow you to scale, and then serving the right customer. So founders need product judgment as well, so that they can actually not get seduced by the noise that many folks tend to do, or shallow feedback. Knowing your ICP, who your ideal customer profile, knowing who you're serving, knowing their sharp problem, and being able to create some learning mechanism is critical. And why I believe that founders should be thinking as like product managers if they want to be successful these days.
And when we talk about product management, before we, I guess, like really dive into going from 0 to $100 million ARR, what is one of the biggest misconceptions you hear / see, I guess, SaaS founders or teams have regarding product management?
The most important thing a founder can do is build a product. Now, we know founders are stretched thing. They got to raise money if that's an issue, and they have to hire people. But by far the most important risk, even as an investor, is build risk. This is the thing that knocks off 90% of startups. Are you building something that's valuable in a form and function that people want? Founders have to address product management very early. They have to change and pivot according to the customer. In the beginning, it's just customers, customer satisfaction, customer pool, customer attraction. And so it's a mixture of building it and also telling a story about how you built it so that you can tell the thing. So basically, founding is product management early on. Product management is a responsibility. Often the people who do it, aka founders, don't have that title. Some of them have never done it before, but they're good at it. But someone must be doing product always. And what happens is eventually the founder times out, has too much on their plate, and then they have to sort of think about hiring people to support them. But there's always someone doing product management. And if you don't do it, you won't be able to make the thing that's valuable. Even if you do the first version of that, the second version may suck because you don't have time to spend with customers and understand this stuff. The biggest misconception is related to what Ezinne said, which is it's about the necessary but drudgery work of product management, which is like having meetings, setting objectives, sitting down with people, grooming the backlog. But the most important thing a founder can do is cultivate your customers, understand what makes them tick, understand how you can translate that into bits and bytes and get it to them. We think that people get distracted too much by some of the more tactical stuff.
Let me say this. The biggest misconception, again, is prioritizing features, writing product requirement documents. And the reason I wanted to underscore it is that when AI and what LLMs can do came up, because people don't realize that is simply the administrative, the job really being clarifying, et cetera, and making decisions, people mistook the writing PRDs and prioritizing as the job. So with AI, people are like, wow, the sky is falling. Product management is going away. It is so embedded in the entire system that is what PM is, such that it created this fear. But again, if you really elevate it and think about it as making decisions, being very clear in your bets, and all that is simply the administration, the documentation of what those bets are, et cetera, then you aren't as afraid of what AI does, because AI only does the admin layer of what a PM should be doing or a founder should be doing as they do product management.
Joanna, let me give you an illustration. You hire 10 developers. They all cost you $100. What's that? $1,000, right? They make something. And about 30% of your customers buy it for X amount, and you make some money. Now you hire 9 developers and 1 PM. They all still cost you $100. They make something, but with the product manager, if they're any good, they've increased the customer attraction of the thing by 50%. And so now your take rate, your adoption rate has gone up by maybe like 20%. And you're charging the same amount of money. You just made more money, basically. This is the logic of product management, of the product thinking, if that makes sense. It actually returns on capital. It actually gives you more money in your pocket as a founder, if done correctly.
Because in the end, you make calculated decisions, the needs of your customers, you're going to bring them to the product.
They adopt more, you make more money, basically.
Exactly. If you're going to have AI do all the work, then you end up with a huge product, which is going to work for everybody or nobody at the same time.
You know, AI is just a tool, right? It doesn't replace anything. There's still someone who's thinking, what do I build? AI is not going to do that for you. We use AI all the time at Product Mind at Phalanx, and it never replaces our creative thinking. It just doesn't have the ability.
Gotcha. Today, we're going to talk about how to scale a product from $0 to $100 million ARR. So we're going to start at the complete zero, I guess. So when somebody's just starting out, no customers, no traction, what are the non-negotiables, or what are the things they need to do to get a good product strategy in place?
Oh, wow. The first thing we tell founders is, and this is hard to hear because this is almost minus zero, is you got to find a sharp problem. Okay. This is the first mistake founders make. Work on a problem that if you solve it, and if you solve it maybe like 2-3 times better than the current incumbents, people will need it. That's what a sharp problem is. The counterpoint to an unsharp problem. I've worked on unsharp problems in my life. I think I worked on a startup where I was trying to get people to meet physically, right? And it turned out not to be a sharp problem. It's just that people overestimated the ability to do it, that they didn't care, that they made it better. So you have to work on a sharp problem. This is important because founders tend to gravitate to problems they experience. Founding is a very me-centered, often me-centered, but it should be completely customer-centered. You can work on a problem you've never experienced if you understand it well enough. And so the first thing is find a problem that if you solve it, people will buy it. That's the first thing. I would say that a lot of startups, 50% of startups we see die because of this, because no one is listening. They're still like, oh, I experienced this. This is a pain I have. I'm going to work on it. Boom. It doesn't really work because not everyone, not a million people experience it, not in that very specific way. So I'll start with that.
One of the things I noticed is for you to find a sharp problem, you've identified an area you want to work on, like some space. But people also lose sight of who they're solving a problem for. So just making sure you have that sharp problem identified and continue to finesse and sharpen even your ICP. Who is this for? Because you're going to encounter people that are who you should be serving, but not quite. But you gain clarity, continue to gain clarity on who are you solving for. When you see someone that is using a product that is not quite the person, being honest about that and saying, well, they use it in this case and not, and then shave that off. Because I've seen so many founders that I advise get distracted by the second customer who comes in and is sort of kind of who they wanted to serve, but not quite. And then you start building this extra service layer for them. So that's a place people get lost and start looking for dollars. And the dollars are good now, but it prevents you from building something that is sustainable for a repeatable group of folks that could truly allow you to like be that rocket ship that goes from the 100 to 1,000. That's the piece I want to level. Sharpen your person, check on the problem again. Sharpen who you're solving for, check on the problem. It's this little loop of refinement that I think is required.
One of the noisy things is people listen to the wrong customers. And also one of the noisy things that people don't define their customer narrow enough. They're like salespeople or salespeople at work. That's not a definition. Find the narrowest version of your customer, the one that has 10,000 people in it, and try to make sure you lock that down. Eventually your customer definition will get to 1 million people and so on. You have to have a narrow definition. The next thing you got to do is let's get to Phalanx. We're building some companies right now. So we're really in this right now. Let's try to get to 10K MRR or 20K MRR or whatever that is. The next thing you have to do, if you have a sharp problem, you have the right customer definition and you're not focused on everybody because people can throw money at you and distract you, is you have to build something important and useful. So this is where you apply classic product management, define the product, design it, build it with developers, which is very hard. It's hard to marshal those people to do this thing. AI makes it easier today, but it doesn't make it any less hard because the bringing it together is very difficult. You got to build that stuff and you got to build it very quickly. Don't be distracted. We talk about simple, lovable, and complete, not MVPs. And the reason is viable depends on your market. If you're building to compete with Adobe, you might build for 2 years like Figma. If you're building something new where there's nobody, which is, by the way, dangerous, then your viable is smaller, if that makes sense. Right? But what we really want is not just viable, we want simple, lovable, and complete. You get your first 100 customers. You go out, you recruit them, even if they don't necessarily pay for the product, even if all the growth mechanisms are not in the product. In fact, you should email them invoices once they start using it more than once. That's how you do the very quick validation. Actually approach a decent MRR. Your first product, simple, lovable, complete, doesn't have all the growth mechanisms, expresses the value you want to create, get it to your beta customers very quickly. That process has to be fast. Some people take 2 years to do this. You shouldn't do that. A year, you shouldn't do that. Try to do it in 3 to 6 months, right? And that's how you do that. And if people spend weekly time in the product and they talk to you and they're very invested, you're off to the races because they will pay for it usually. Some of them will pay for it. That's a good way to validate your direction.
Yeah, well, I think now the point of Ezinne will come back, right? You now have your first users. You need to keep sharpening the problem in your ICP because you have more users coming in. If we talk about the book or your process, what in your case would now be the next step if you have the simple, lovable, and complete solution out there?
Okay, because you've designed something for maybe 10,000 people on the planet. Okay, because you're very specific. You didn't try to boil the ocean. People are spending time in it. It's rough, but they're actually spending time because hopefully you found some of the most motivated people for this particular workflow. Now they're telling you what they need. If you segmented and listen to the right people amongst them, one of the things that anti-patterns is that an enterprise gets interested. Now they make you their outsourced dev team because they have a very specific need. But in B2B SaaS, you want scale. There's no money in it, or the sales cycle work too long. And so now you refine. You essentially open up. There's a chapter on customer listening. You open up the aperture and you absorb what people are saying. You filter it for what people need versus what they want, right? And then you build more product. And at the same time, you're gearing up for growth, meaning you're adding and sanding down the first part of the product, like the thing that gets people in. You're identifying what is a critical path journey that makes people stick around. You're figuring out how to get people to pay as seamlessly as possible. We talk about payments as it is just payments, but payments is psychology. Payments is basically the intersection between what happens in the first moment of the product, how does it solve my problem beyond the first moments, and what is my value equation in my head that makes me give up $1. You have to refine that. And I think that's the next step.
And you talk about user behavior, you talk about psychology of paying. Are there any other signals founders should look for before really investing into growth?
Product market fit isn't loud. It isn't big. It's consistent, right? Before scaling, there are two core problems I see founders do. One is a common one, which is premature abstraction. I'm ready for scale and I'm building for scale. Yeah, I have nobody, but I'm thinking of scale from the beginning. One of the things I've noticed is that founders are now using growth hacking a little too early. And let me explain. You can't really know if you have landed a true problem, if you solve something, if you're playing these games with people of nudging and trying to do these inbound calls, etc. If you really, really are seeking product market fit, you really want people who are using your product. And no matter how janky it is, repetitively, they will talk about it. You want to go back to the core fundamentals of people like literally loving this thing and including it into their workflow so much so that when you change a pixel, they're pissed because it's it's embedded in their workflow. You want them using it without nudging. You want them to want to ask, hey, when can I get this and how can I pay? That is truth. That is clarity. That is pure. Then you know who it is you're serving, how you want to serve them because they're using your product in a very fundamental way. Then you can begin to scale. we tend to start using these tricks a little too early, and we tend to start to use the scaling mindset of, yes, let's build on this particular Kubernetes system, etc. So just back up on that and get to ground truth first.
Yeah. And I feel like you both are focusing super heavy on the fundamentals, right? I think it's super important if you're building not on the right sharp problem, as you call it, and you're not actually building something people need, then you're probably going to end up with a problem later down the line. And this is probably the fundamentals on how to actually get to 100 million ARR.
There are many companies that I always talk about, do you want to be a small business SaaS company, like SMB, like just stay there? Or do you actually want to be a unicorn? And both are good answers. None is bad, because you can actually create a good SaaS company, make money, change your family's future for a long time with your company. But we're always looking at what is it that takes people off the track of truly being a unicorn versus not. So it's just trying to distinguish. And you can still do all the things I said, prepare for abstraction and scale prematurely. You can also not necessarily use all the hacks, and you will still build a decent B2B SaaS company. This is figuring out who stays on which lane to get to what outcome. How do you bring people on board? How do you keep the strategy clear? How do you communicate, build organizations that allow you to grow?
So I think from a product perspective, there is basically chase product market fit first, then tack on growth and scale and the payment psychology on top. The founder is also doing other things that will secure their future. I think this is the time to sort of use an example. I like using Calendly because Toby is a good friend of mine. He found a niche, scheduling, which was underserved. Lots of salespeople lost meetings because 50% of meetings don't happen before something like Calendly. So salespeople make a lot of money. They make millions in our economy. And so he sort of knew, because he was a salesperson, so he found something that he was connected to. If he solved it and made it more efficient, he could get it to 0 missed meetings. It will be valuable because there's money behind it. Once he found that Calendly was free for a year, right? He just focused on getting it right. Once they did, they added a freemium engine, started converting people and getting people paid. Like, people literally sent checks in the early days of Calendly. So that's a good example. They didn't do anything like that too early. They didn't waste time doing it. They just wanted to get it right. But the other thing that's important at this stage is your focus on talent, meaning that the selection of your development team, the selection of your people, your captains, people who are solving the big problems, not finance, but just collecting invoices, reducing the sales cycle, making sure the smartest people are in the door that you can find. Also working on that is huge. There's this startup in Australia that I worked with, and it was the same thing. In their case, they didn't nail a sharp problem. This problem wasn't sharp enough. And actually, the reason sharp problem works is it gives you insurance. It gives you resiliency, because if you make a mistake, if you have a sharp problem, people stick around. If you don't, they will just leave. But they had a sharp problem. But in this case, they really focused on talent. So they had very good people in the door to solve problems as they came up. So beyond the product is also like, really smart companies make sure that they have smart people within it. They obsess about that very early.
I think across the board, the founder is responsible and is part of the growth solution. But one of the things is, from 0 to 1 mil, you're really PMF obsessed. That's what you're focused on. High touch, no automation, and get back to the fundamentals. From 1 to 10 is what I would say, be segment-led, ICP focused, like ICP clarity, find repeatable sales motions, get clarity on, just earn that right to experiment with a particular group and be so clear on how you're solving a problem. And then from, I would say, the 10 million to 30 million, you're working on org-wide alignment. What are your what we call product systems? How are you putting, and how are you hiring leaders? How are you finding them? How are you instilling processes that you need? How do you communicate strategy? How are decisions made when you're not in the room? How are metrics used to shape decisions? So that's kind of the area, at least that's what we're building out. And the last is where you get to 30 to 100 million. Obviously, you're thinking about this from the beginning, but moats and distribution. That's your strategic moats and distribution. In the book, we talk about your strategy, knowing that you must create a moat. If you want to get to that unicorn level or you want to go beyond 30 million, you have to be different and unique. So what are the platform bets that you're taking? How are you using AI? Is AI just on the edges or core to your product? How are you going to market? Are you finding partners? So really thinking fundamentally, are you going to exploit economies of scale? Are you going to exploit scope, right? What are you going to be a true platform and do the whole two-sided benefits you get from having a true distribution model that includes a platform? 0 to 1 is PMF focus. 1 to 10 is org-wide alignment, getting your segment focus and ICP focus. And third is org-wide, really trying to scale with your people. Last is being truly strategic and differentiated and getting clear distribution. I hope that helps.
Are you struggling to find a cost-effective and scalable marketing channel? Check out Reditus. We help you to have other people recommend your SaaS, and you would only pay them when they deliver you paid clients, making it a very cost-effective and scalable marketing channel. Want to learn more? Go to getreditus.com. It's a super basic question. Everybody has a different answer. When you say 0 to 1 million product market fit focus, what does it actually mean for the both of you? Like, what is product market fit in your opinion?
I talked about this earlier. What it looks like to me is that somebody is willing to use my product regardless of how janky the thing is. And really, it is that. And honestly, I have been in situations, either consulting or even at my company, where the minute I change something, I get a call, right? It was like, why did you change that? Because it is so fundamental to how that person is using it. And it is part of how they're making a bet on you with their own bets, their own business. They are repeating this product, using it without any single nudge. And they call me and tell me that a dev has changed one thing or the other because they're so in the product. And they're telling me how to sell my product. You could say it this way because I found out how I could use it this other way. Like one of my mentors said, it isn't about anything. It's just this consistent drag or pull from your customer. You'll know you have it because they're using it, valuing it, talking about it, and seem invested in it.
Product market fit is when people start to live and do their workflows in your product, and they prefer it to whatever alternatives they had before, and they're taking it super seriously. And how you know is if you break something, they shout, right? That's product market fit. The opposite is they don't live in it, don't come back, don't bet on it with their time. And that's it. It's when you get a few people to bet on with your time. And real product market fit really is when that number starts to increase and it keeps increasing, right? Because people are now sharing what it is. In the book, we try to say startup phase, mid phase, and scale phase. At every point, the problems change dramatically for founders. It's just like raising teenagers. If you're not perceiving how they're changing, you can't solve the problem. You can't do it. Some people take a startup mentality and hit 20 million ARR, 25 million ARR, and they fail, right? Even if they did really well. And some people hit 20, 50, and then they can't get to 100 and fail. Founders have to understand this is a phased journey. Some things you did before don't translate. The thing that translates the most is talent, getting good people in. Even the organization shape changes. We consult with lots of companies between 20 and 100 million, and the problem is always different. In the first phase, get the product right and understand your business model. In the next phase, scale, distribute, find ways to get your product out there in your market, in foreign markets, translation, make sure the growth engine works. There's a self-sustaining cycle. One thing I didn't mention is virality and network effects. Huge. There's something called platform effects. There's something called network effects, which is, by the way, the biggest and most substantial power in building technology companies. If you have no network effects, there is no big company that has network effect. Like if you use Word, Microsoft Word, you're going to need Word on the other side to decode it. And so, boom, 1 billion people are using Word. And I was there at Microsoft when some of these things happen. And so network effects, which virality helps you get to network effects. Within that middle ground, you have to think about how to engineer it. It takes time, but if you do it consciously, by the time you get to 80, 100 million, you can keep going. But if you don't do it, you stall, if that makes sense.
Let's dive deeper into the network effect. You gave the word example, but Calendly had a network effect as well, right?
Virality, I built some early network effects. We were very viral, thank God. But network effects wasn't actually there because word of mouth is not the same as network effects, it's just virality. Network, that was to differentiate, people mistake them. Virality is when you spend zero money on marketing because your customers are pulling you forward. They can do it through just talking to each other because it's so amazing, or you've built in ways, let's call it synthetic virality, ways for people to share easily, right? That's virality. Network effects is when one more person in the product is added, everyone benefits immediately. Going back to Word, I have Word, I create a document in Word. Now, if one more person creates a document in Word in Mongolia, I suddenly have one more person who can read my document, right? That's network effects. And so Calendly didn't have initial network effects, have a lot of virality. But one of the things that happened, and there's more that they're going to build, is now if both of us have Calendly and try to schedule each other, when I pull up Calendly, I can see your schedule beside mine. I don't have to look at my calendar anymore, right? And so all of a sudden, every time one more person joins Calendly, I'm spending less calories comparing calendars. That is network effects.
They basically built features. So first off, it was virality. Each person had its own, and they were telling each other, but it didn't benefit. But the minute they started adding collaborative sharing, the ability to see other calendars, that's when network effects is in place, because now the ability for me and Audrey to look at our joint calendars to see more, there's just more value. And then you, myself, Joran, you two, you're added. So that actually is more networking, but they basically layered it in over time.
Let me give you a weird example. Slack didn't have network effects. It had virality. If I use Slack and you use Slack upstairs in a 10th floor in a different office, at lunch, we're like, oh, this amazing tool. Was that word of mouth virality? But for the longest time, it didn't matter that you had it and I had it. I didn't benefit. My office benefited from it, right? So there was intra-office network effects, but not cross-company network effects, which is what you want, right? And email has network effects. Anytime one more person gets an email address, there's one more person you can email. That's network effects. Slack started getting network effects when they fully built out their inter-org stuff that people take for granted today. Network effects. They connect. Or connect is network effects, which is different. But now Slack can become as ubiquitous as email. Anytime one person gets Slack, there's one more person you can Slack in the world. So that's different.
And when we talk about virality or network effect, like when should SaaS founders think about this? Do they need to think about it from early days, or should they take the approach, for example, for Slack, where they did the network effect like really later down the line?
That's a good question. I'll try to answer it briefly. Think of virality as early as possible, right? Meaning, don't build to do this for yourself. Build it to do app for your team and yourself. Make it so good that people talk about it. Like Typeform was viral because it was so beautiful, conversational form making. It didn't really have network effects, and I don't think we still do, but it was completely viral. So virality should be designed in as early as possible because it makes your CAC, B2B SaaS models, understand this. The customer acquisition cost will be way lower and your profitability will be super high. So think about it from jump. Like even when you're designing the product, be thinking about virality, prioritize those things, unless they're distractions. Sometimes you have to wait to get product market fit first. So that's what I would say. Network effects is a weird thing. If you have 10,000 customers and you start building network effects, there's not enough critical mass for it to matter. Okay. The first time Calendly hit like 4 million people before we start thinking about network effects. And think about all the people that can schedule, like 100 million, 1 billion people. So 10,000 over 1 billion people, network effects doesn't really matter that much. Virality matters much more. But once you hit a critical mass, 4 million, 5 million, whatever, then network effects starts to matter. People start to notice it because they're encountering other people who use your product, right? So network effects is different. Virality is very early. Network effects, think about it, but understand that it's not effective unless there's critical mass. And so it's a number of customers gain. When I built it at Calendly, it was early. but I knew that our growth rate was such that it will start to matter very quickly. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Let's look at the future before we start wrapping things up. What do you see as the biggest risk or maybe even biggest opportunity now for SaaS product teams, product managers, and I guess especially with also AI reshaping a lot of the things?
For the world as a whole, or just our industry as a whole, one of the biggest risks I think of, and this isn't necessarily for SaaS PMs and AWS, but first off, it's just a lot of waste. I just see a lot of code sitting around unfinished, not meaning anything. It just gives me concern. I think about this idea of the fast fashion of tech, and AI is creating all of these features and factories of things that are not going to be useful. The beauty is it's code, you can clean it up, you can, break down, if you have things can just close things down, but it cost us energy. It was wasteful to get there. The big risk on product management side is people focusing more on patching their AI prompts from vibe coding and just a lot of energy more on fixing and band-aiding than actually owning the end-to-end user journey. And I'm seeing a lot of people waste time there, a lot. They're not spending the time really backing up and saying, what journey do I want to create? What problem, what solution do I want to offer? And starting from that, like back in the day when I did computer engineering, pseudo coding was really important. You step back and pseudo code it. You don't just start writing code. You step back and ask, how do you want to construct this thing? So that's one of the risks I see. People being these prompt janitors, cleaning up things versus actually truly owning solutions end to end. I'm excited about AI in spite of it all. I'm really, really excited about AI. I'm excited about reimagining of our workflows. We haven't even started scratching the surface because I think that AI is going to if we really allow it and take full advantage, a 7-step workflow, particularly in B2B SaaS, can become 1 step. And I've seen how AI has changed how I do work, how much it gives me back time from my family. And I'm just 100% thrilled as an opportunity. I think it's going to rewrite the system of work, allowing us to move basically, instead of AI being a tool, it could truly be a teammate, right? Of us sitting right next to us, doing a lot of the heavy lifting, allowing PMs and founders to truly think a little above, right? A different strata.
I'll take a different tack. What's happened in the last 2-3 years since GPT-3 came out is that it's almost like the cloud coming out, right? Like if you host your own data center and run it became untenable. It was the economics of having AWS was so good that you couldn't do better until you were worth billions of dollars. Like Facebook hosts its own stuff and own data centers, but like you can't get there below that kind of economic scale. And so AI is like that. At Typeform, we met with the other founder, David, and I tried to build a business inside Typeform that was AI. We expected to be disrupted by AI. We prepared for that future by building the next future version of Typeform inside Typeform. And so one of the ideas we talk about is AI at the edge and AI at the core. Every SaaS founder has to, if you started in 2019, you have to reimagine your entire business built around this new tool, this new thing. The technology level has changed dramatically. Things built on static code, TypeScript, React, they're not going to make it in this next iteration, even if they're very customer focused. Because what your competitors will come and do is that they will apply this new tool. And if you deliver this workflow and you can get it down to 5 minutes, they will do the same thing and get it down to 30 seconds. And that 4x gap in speed, in convenience, will disrupt you. So people have to reimagine. Now, this is harder than it seems. When I was at Microsoft and we were fighting the internet browser wars, I started working, being a PM I've been a PM for over 25 years. One of the things that Bill Gates did was that he bought Internet Explorer and built it into the OS, which created problems for him later with the US federal government. Well, we spend so much time thinking about the internet as browsing the web, the World Wide Web, that we missed many innovations. We missed Twitter, we missed even Facebook, we missed Google. Basically, those guys were like Napoleon. They stopped fighting on the desktop and started fighting elsewhere. And we didn't know where the battle was. And so, and it's a good thing, I guess, for the world. These people create trillions of dollars. The thing about this uncertain time is that even B2B founders who are very close, who are very savvy, we're not sure where all the battles will be. We're not sure where all the value is. What I would tell B2B founders is don't be fake. Get into artificial intelligence, all the tools, you should use them every day. You should be talking to people who understand how to do proofs. If you listen to the builders who are building AI, they're using terms that we're not using today that you should be familiar with. I'm working with a startup in Clickstream. They're one of those people in product management that watch what your customers do for you so that you can see the problems with the website, with the app, and so on and so forth. And you can, it's like a click, I don't know, it's like Full Story, right? Something like that. But those products, because of the era of technology we're in, they could only tell you there's a problem. In the future, products like that will watch your customers, identify the problem, identify the top 5. If you're paying attention, it's like the traffic, the problem identification, filtering. They'll know your existing code base, they'll write the PRD and write the code to fix it, all automatically. With these tools, founders can be more ambitious. They can only do a little bit of the thing. The things you couldn't do, you're going to be able to do. Think hard about getting to what people actually want. I don't want people to watch my traffic. I want to watch my traffic, identify problems, and fix them. That's the new startup. Clickstream watching is no longer enough. Get fundamental, paint natively, or you'll be disrupted over the next 10 years. And even then, stay frosty, keep your head on swivel. There's so much going on we have to keep up with.
There's a lot of things you need to be catching up on and being part of, I guess, nowadays to keep up on things. Let's start wrapping things up. So we'll dive into famous questions of the podcast. So when we talk about in general regarding growing a B2B SaaS, what kind of advice would you give a SaaS founder who's just starting out and growing to 10K monthly recurring revenue?
First, AI, everything wants to be AI. But again, think of it as a tool. A toolkit's actually more. Focus on the core problem and then power it with AI. But the one that I think is enduring, right, that is really important is that no matter what you think, the people you surround yourself with are going to be critical for your success, period. Culture is a compounding engine for you, and you need to guard it early. You're only one person, and you can only do what one person can do. And as a result, who you bring on board to help you bring this stream to be is critical, because 2 people can do way more and 3 people can then it's just a compounding effect. So be thoughtful about bringing your first partner and all the other folks that come alongside. I know it's not a tech response, but that's the heart of where I am. I really think that your culture and your people are truly your compounding engine, and you need to be thoughtful, guard it early, and plan well for it.
So my advice is super simple. You have to get to 10K MRR. The only thing that really matters is product market fit. So what you should be doing is you should be building and listening. You should be building with your customers as much as possible. Try not to trust your taste making yourself, right? Build and listen to get to 10K MRR. And the money part of it, the 10K part, is a little connected to the science of growth. You don't have to be like a full-on growth organization, but you do have to pay attention to the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the journey into your main product to get to 10K, right? Like that number. I would say earlier on, growth is the main thing, but to get to actually 10K, you have to get the product market fit, and then you have to pay a little bit of attention to the journey in, right? I think that's the thing I would ask you to focus on. Now, to enable that, Ezinne is right. You have to marshal a team that's paying attention to the right things and ignoring the things that you can defer. And they have to be some of the smartest and most motivated people that you have. And it'll be great if you have a co-founder to help you think about problems, and whether it's emotional, organizational, or otherwise. I think that's very important.
Let's assume now we passed the 10K MLR and we're going to make a huge step. I know we're going to grow towards 10 million ARR. What kind of advice would you give here?
I think your product system matters. In order to get to 10 million, you're going to have to be obsessed. So build something worthy of obsession. I think that where a lot of people get tripped up about is that they have a plan. They now have ICP and they've built a roadmap. So I think that my advice is don't fall in love with your roadmap. Fall in love with your customer and their messy life. All the things they're doing, the things around them, the things that distract them from their job. Know that intimately and be able to design around that. In order for you to go from 10K to 10 million, you're going to have some level of obsession. So make sure you're working on things that are worthy of obsession. You have to be your obsession, their obsession. So just make sure you're finessing, refining, and taking a look at that roadmap in a way that it just makes sense and it's worth waking up every single moment to go work on, because that's what it's going to take.
10 million ARR, a lot of it is knowing what to do and what not to do. Your revenue engine must be tuned. Your growth engine must start to really take shape, because that's basically the path to, especially for B2B SaaS, to collecting money. Internally, you have to start to design an organization that can repeat innovation. How many people do you have? What do they do? How to keep that small without overgrowing, because otherwise you're just relying on investors and you're not relying on getting profitable as soon as possible. There's this idea that we talk about, is also in the book, about working on things that are the hardest part of what your customer finds the hardest always. Work on things that have no good workaround. At Calendly, we didn't give you a way to send a link. We could have built it into the product. Send link, put email, send. We didn't do that because we knew that people could copy the link and send it themselves. They had email, they had Slack, and so on and so forth. We didn't want to replicate the communication part of it. We wanted to replicate the scheduling part, which was very difficult. And people always like, why can't you do this? I'm like, people know how to do it. And so we won't work on that problem. So work on the hardest parts of the workflow that you can, not the ones that just deliver mere convenience. Convenience is good, but not if you haven't worked on the hardest parts people still experience for the core workflow that you're working on. And this goes back to the roadmap. I'm sort of thinking about the revenue side of this because you're talking about ARR. And so those are the things that I would say that you have to focus on. I'm sure there's more, but that's what occurs to me at the moment.
The other one I need to underscore is the idea of decisions when you're not in the room. In order for you to actually go from 10K to 10 million, you've got to figure out, honestly, and this is where we talk about product systems, your decisioning, your strategy. How is it that you are clearly communicating where it is you want to go so that everybody in your building, everybody in the company knows that I can make decisions that allow you to get to that 10 million. That's a piece that I mentioned around culture, but it truly comes to life here in terms of it being your compounding engine in how you communicate the way you'd like decisions to be made. And that comes down to being clear about your strategy and ensuring people can make decisions based on that strategy when you, the founder, are not in it.
Nice. Well, I'm going to try and summarize. When we go all the way to the beginning, product management is a craft. Create a product that people love and more specifically, people need. So starting out, find a sharp problem, solve it so people actually need it. Good thing, it doesn't have to be your problem. So it can be anybody's problem as long as it's a sharp problem. And keep sharpening the problem in your ICP from the beginning. But listen to the right customers when you actually do so. When you do this, next, build a product, keep it simple, lovable, and complete. and really filter for what people need versus what they want. Don't charge too early. You gave the Calendly example, like really build a user base first. When we chop it up into revenue stages, going from 0 to 1 million, product market fit focus, be part of the workflows. They care about your product, build and listen, and try to build virality as soon as possible. It will definitely help you decrease your customer acquisition cost. Going from 1 million to 10 million ARR, be clear on solving your problem and who are you focusing on, so to make sure you keep refining your ICP and fall in love with your customers, not your roadmap. And then design an organization to repeat innovation. Going from 10 million to 30 million ARR, focusing on building processes, building a great team, and of course, check if you can have a network effect where it is when a new user comes on board, everybody else benefits from it. But it only becomes important when you hit critical mass. And we're going from 30 million to $100 million ARR, create a moat. And of all these phases, you can't have the same mentality. So going into different phases, make sure that you know that what worked before won't work in the next phase probably. Looking at AI, have it become your teammate. And if you haven't built, or if you have built your product before the AI phase, rethink your product strategy, because otherwise you're going to be disrupted.
Oh my God, that's a SaaS product right there. Your summarization engine is an actual product. When can we see that?
We're going to sell it soon. If people love this summary and people love this episode, I talked about one book, but you at the beginning actually mentioned you wrote a second book. So you have one book called Building Rocketships, Product Management for High Growth Companies. What is the second book called?
It's still the same book. It's called the Pro Edition. So we wrote that book, and it has the core of what it is that we speak of. But we chose to create like worksheets, templates, all the tools that Audrey and I have collectively used throughout our entire career, particularly because some founders have actually never worked in product management in companies that have these tools. So we have this thing that is on this book. It's on Coda. You can actually download templates. We have step-by-step guides. We teach you things like how do you calculate K factor, what are the step-by-step guides for building, having a strategic meeting and getting alignment across the organization. We go into that type of depth. So that's what we call the Building Rocketships Pro Edition, available online through Coda. And you can get it at productmind.co/BR correct?
Yes, BR Pro.
We're going to link to it, so I'll make sure that the link is correct. If people want to get in contact with the both of you, what is the best way to do so?
You can hit us up. If you go to productmind.co, you'll see us. We write important things for founders and product managers on Substack. It's called the Product Mind Substack. LinkedIn,
social.
But honestly, the best way is to subscribe to Substack. One of the things that we're trying to create a community, a Slack community of product managers and builders. It's growing slowly and just because of time. Our heart is to help founders and product managers build important things in the world. That's really what it is. We don't like the fact that a lot of product management knowledge is locked up in the Bay Area, locked up in Seattle, and even we want the world to drown in really good advice, just like your podcast does. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Nice. And as you mentioned, things compound. You mentioned Substack might be small now, but who knows? It is going to compound over time, and we're going to make it more famous now. So check out the Substack. We'll make sure to link it for product managers and builders out there. Thanks again for coming on. For people listening on Spotify, I'm going to add a poll again to this episode. So please answer the poll so I know what you thought of this episode. And of course, if you haven't, give us a review. Please do so we can boost the algorithms on all the platforms. Thanks again for coming on, OG and Ezinne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for watching this show of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. You made it till the end, so I think we can assume you like this content. If you did, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you like this content, feel free to reach out if you want to sponsor the show, if you have a specific guest in mind, if you have a specific topic you want us to cover, reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to take a look at it. If you want to know more about Veritas, feel free to reach out as well. But for now, have a great day and good luck growing your B2B SaaS.